Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and what I want to do today is actually talk about the mobiGlas. And we got some information about the mobiGlas, and when I say we got some information, we got a boatload of information. Roberts basically said that he wanted to go through and give us more detailed information about how things are being developed, what sort of process they're going through, and kind of keep us more in the loop. And we got a crap load of information about the mobiGlas. So I'm going to do a little bit of a kind of a brief overview on what the mobiGlas is and how you can use it to kind of interact with your environment. But I'm not going to go into the entirety of this because it's going to be so long if I do that. So if you look in the description for the longer version, if you want to actually read it, I've got a link to the article that Roberts posted up. But let's go ahead and jump into kind of the basics of it. Now, the description for the mobiGlas is, it's a compact and light, it comfortably attaches to your wrist, it's easy to use, it augments your life everywhere, all the time. With mobiGlas, transform the ordinary into micro-tech ordinary. Like all micro-tech products, the new mobiGlas has stunning visual design that conjugates style, power, and usability without compromises. Now, that sounds a bit like a sales pitch, but when we actually start talking about the mobiGlas, it's basically going to be something that you wear on your wrist. And the mobiGlas is going to be using 2D and 3D information. And where text is mostly going to be displayed through like 2-dimension, you're going to kind of start seeing things like images and items that will be kind of conformed more into a 3D environment. Basically, the mobiGlas is capable of kind of creating its own hologram for you to visualize, or you can kind of project your own images onto visors, ship panels, screens, and hangers, and all sorts of stuff like that. Basically, you're going to have your kind of text and hologram display, but augmented reality is where we're going to kind of see a lot of cool things take place. Now, if you haven't watched the Windows 10 hologram preview yet, that's going to give you a pretty cool idea of what this is all about, and kind of a very real-world application to something that we as a humanity are kind of reaching towards in our lifetime. It's really kind of mind-blowing stuff, so I would suggest you go watch that because it's really interesting. Now, there's several types of AR displays, and that's going to be augmented reality within that mobiGlas. And the first of which is going to be enhanced entities. Basically, this is adding info to real items, like an outline or lighting, whether that be to a person or a weapon. The second is going to be holographic objects, and these are basically invisible items to the game. When people are looking around, you're not ever going to see these. However, if you pull up your mobiGlas, you're all of a sudden going to be able to see these. I think that's more of how the engine's going to interpret these types of things. Things like that could be navigational icons, which makes sense because there's no reason for me to want you to be able to see my GPS while I'm on a planet. If you want to follow me for some nefarious reason, you can follow me the old-fashioned way. And then the last AR object type are AR labels, and these are going to be always present. We didn't get a lot of information on these, so I can't really talk about what these may be, but those are going to be kind of the augmented reality type of states that we're actually going to be able to see. Now, the color scheme for the mobiGlas is going to be primarily blue, and basically that's because it's kind of become the cultural norm for what holograms are supposed to look like. Now, I'm fine with that, considering it feels pretty intuitive to look at, and I think when we look at a blue kind of glowing thing, we kind of assume hologram. It's just what sci-fi has taught us. The text is going to be bright white on top of that, just to ease, how it looks. It's going to be for visibility purposes. However, there have been mentions from CIG about making these assets customizable, especially to kind of accommodate those with color blindness. Now, I haven't seen specifics on customization, but I would assume there's at least going to be some kind of stock or predetermined ways that you can kind of change those options to help out. Now, the real purpose for the mobiGlas is to really allow you to connect with everything around you. Now, this is going to interface with your ship to allow for things like diagnostics and information, and that could potentially help you out with complicated things like repairs or maybe overclocking. An example they gave was the ability to interface with things around you, like external screens. I like to kind of think about sitting in your hangar with your organization around, and you sit there and pull up your flight plan, and you flick it up onto a big screen, and everybody in your hangar then has the ability to kind of see your flight operations. And that really sounds incredibly immersive and very awesome. It almost might feel like a kind of a flight prep room on an aircraft carrier. And the mobiGlas isn't just a HUD, that it's not going to just be something that comes across your visor or maybe some ocular implant. It's actually a projection from your wrist. And as a result, others can see it. And what this really means is that you can share information with others from your arm, which is basically kind of the futuristic version of sharing information on like a tablet. On top of that, we've seen info runner and hacking type ships, like the Herald. We've heard about the Warlord variant of the, or Warlock variant of the Avenger. And that may be kind of the same for the mobiGlas. You're going to have the ability to kind of view information on other people's mobiGlas, and you could use that for whatever purposes you have. I haven't seen it mentioned, but I wouldn't be surprised if you had the ability to kind of hack other people's mobiGlasses, especially if they're not being careful. So that may really lead to some cool like spy type roles that people could take on. Chris even went on to say that some bars or locations might even prevent mobiGlas usage by jamming the device so that you can't, scan the patrons in that bar. And that really adds some interesting elements to bounty hunting. Wouldn't you say? You walk in, you're looking for your target, you look at your wrist, and nope, there's nothing there. Nothing to help you find your target. So I don't think all bars or establishments are going to be like that, but if it's a well-known pirate system or bar, I'm guessing that's probably going to be something you're going to have to deal with. Chris also kind of started talking about an ability to tag items. And since the mobiGlas is interconnected with everything in the environment, maybe you're walking around and you see somebody that's got this badass pistol on their hip and you want it. Well, you can actually scan it with the mobiGlas, and it might be able to tell you the price, the nearest retailer, information about that pistol. Maybe you're walking around and you see a billboard with a ship advertisement on it. You activate your mobiGlas, and all of a sudden you see buttons to interact with that board. Since everything with the mobiGlas is connected with everything, you're basically able to research everything you want. And with a game that has a scale like this and all the different dynamics of it all, being able to get that information at a moment's notice, I think is going to be something that's extremely helpful, because knowing and memorizing everything in this game is going to be damn near impossible. There's also going to be different series of mobiGlas available in-game. There's going to be the base model, which I would assume everybody gets it starting, but maybe you have to buy it. But then we've also seen things like Explorers versions. And actually, everyone who backed before the $42 million mark, that stretch goal, is going to receive the Explorer class version. And that's coming with things that you might need to find, different systems. And it's going to give you stuff that other people might need to find on their own by either exploring or buying the information or whatever other means there are to acquire that info. I kind of envision maybe we see like an FPS specific version that makes boarding missions easier. Maybe there's salvage specific ones that make life easier when you're floating around in space. I kind of think about a situation where maybe you come across some wreckage, you exit your ship, you float to some crate, and you can scan its contents, get its average price in real time, and decide whether you actually want to bring it onto your ship or not. Who knows? But all of those different types of possibilities are pretty exciting to think about. They also talk about the mobiGlas being able to take damage. They mentioned 4 different tiers of damage that these things can take. Normal means it's working fine. Hurt means that some functions may be disabled and it might act a little bit crazy, or it might glitch out some. Damaged is the 3rd tier, and maybe that means you no longer have the ability to scan and even more functions are unavailable. And then the final state is ruined. Ruined means the damn thing is broken and it's time for a new one. So hopefully you bought the insurance. P.S. I'm kind of joking. I don't know if they're really going to insure these things or not, but you would probably need to buy a new one at that point. The last thing I really want to talk about from this article is that the mobiGlas has a lot of different ranges as well, and these zones are going to kind of determine what and how you can interact with the environment around you. The A zone is the hologram that actually projects right from your wrist, and this is going to take up the majority of your screen, and it's where the vast majority of your interactions are going to take place while using the mobiGlas. The B zone is your extended holo screen, and it's basically going to support certain applications that may take up more room, almost like a panoramic type mode. C is your close range AR, and things in the C zone are basically not at the right distance to interact with. You're either going to need to move up a little bit to kind of select them and get them into that A zone that we already talked about. And then what they really labeled as the sweet spot, according to Chris, is the D zone. All information and infographics are going to be projectable from that zone. And at that zone, you can interact with everything. And finally, the E zone is the far range. And you might be able to get some information about what's going on at that range, but chances are you're going to need to move up to actually interact with it to get a little bit more information on it. That's basically all I wanted to cover, just kind of give you guys a brief overview of what they're doing with the mobiGlas. If you're interested in this, I highly suggest you go in and you read this article, because there's a ton of good information, and it's really exciting to see one of the basic things that we're going to be using in the environment to make our lives a lot easier. To me, this just seems like something that is going to be exciting to see how it all plays out, how it all develops, and how it interacts with everything in the world. And I think we might, and they haven't mentioned this at all, but I would assume that we're going to kind of start seeing more and more with the mobiGlas when the FPS module comes out, and probably with the social module too. I think those are going to be our first real tastes of how this is going to work and how we're going to use this in our daily lives. So if you have questions about this, feel free to ask. Otherwise, check out that article that I've got in the description. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, have yourselves a wonderful day. Stay tuned for a lot more exciting stuff, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.